Whatever you do, make sure you're not making these 5 huge mistakes in Path of Exile Dawn of the Hunt, because they can severely hurt your progression, make you waste a ton of currencies, and just making leveling and progressing your character that much more difficult. So the very first thing to go over some of the basics is to help you during the campaign. There are actually a ton of mistakes here that can make your campaign take way longer than it should. Trust me, he knows what he's talking about. Now, a couple points here: when you're initially playing through the campaign, there are certain areas that you actually don't need to go to. Now, as you're familiar, you need to make sure you're obviously getting all of your passive points, being all of the spots marked here. But again, ideally the bosses with the little plus symbols, meaning if you don't kill them, you don't get free passive points, which is arguably the things that make your builds much better, much quicker, very early on in the game. But keep in mind, just because some of these things don't give you actual full passives, they are pretty important to actually help you scale up a lot quicker. For instance, early on, you might not be tempted to kill the Bramblegast here at Growwood for level 4 because you're trying to speed through the campaign and only get what's needed. But again, when we actually go to fight the Bramblegast, one important thing here is they actually drop skill gems for you, which early on are actually fairly rare, meaning we can pick this up and essentially assign ourselves an entire skill, where at this point we may only have 2 or 3, ultimately increase our chances of doing better quicker in the campaign. Even something as small as getting an uncut skill gem early for extra skills faster. Also, again, areas like this hut in the Growwood, again, if you don't fight this rare boss, that means you missed out on a free uncut support gem, which again early on is a big deal because that gives you a complete full skill gem for one of your damage skills, which can help you in blowing through the first act of the campaign. Trust me, if you miss this stuff, it becomes increasingly harder to make it through the campaign quickly. Another reason why getting that stuff is so important, because if you're struggling still with the campaign, which you very well might, is that if possible you want to try and stay around 3 monster levels higher than yourself for a couple reasons. If you're getting all the extra skill and support gems, that means you can stack more skills and much better skills this way, and overall be able to compete with enemies in the campaign a little bit better. By staying 3 levels ahead, you're getting that extra XP boost from enemies being much higher level than you. If you get to Act 2 and you're about to go into Keth, where they're monster level 25, ideally if you can aim to be level 22 about this time by just speeding through the first part of the campaign, this again will kind of maximize the XP gain you get. Again, if it's the first time you're playing the campaign, play it and enjoy it. It's a great campaign. But if you're trying to just level, trust me, that's what you want to do. Now, the other thing is when you're grabbing your ascendancy, you don't necessarily have to grab this too early. Once you get into Act 2, you actually need to go to the Trial of Sekhmet to unlock the trial itself. Even at level 22, before you get done with Act 2, you should be able, ideally before fighting the Dreadnought, to be able to complete your first ascendancy. This is obviously going to give you an immediate huge power boost depending on what your ascendancy is, that is going to make you a lot more powerful and helping you to defeat Jamanrab. Again, the same kind of goes for Act 3. Once you unlock the Temple of Chaos at level 38, once you get closer to the Act 3 or even into Cruel Act 1, you can come back and complete the Temple of Chaos and get your second ascendancy point, since again this fight isn't too different. A lot of times what I see people wasting their time on is once you get into the Cruel Acts. In order to get your third ascendancy, you need to do a level 60 or above Trial of Sekhmet or Trial of Chaos. Now for your fourth ascendancy, you can get it from an area level 75 or above. Trial of Sekhmet is known for wasting mine and yours' time just because it takes unreasonably long. So what I would focus on is doing an inscribed ultimatum. You only have to complete 10 of the challenges. Then once you complete those 10 challenges, you can get your third ascendancy to then take on the final boss of the Trial of Sekhmet to get your fourth. I think it's probably a little bit easier. So once you get your third ascendancy, before you start worrying about the fourth one, you need to level up and be a lot more powerful for the fourth one. So by all means, don't go in there and waste 10 hours sitting there trying to do it. In my opinion, you need to be at least around level like 80 or 85 and have a pretty specced out character to actually finish this, because trust me, you can waste a lot of time doing this if you're not familiar. Now we have some huge mistakes you can actually make with mapping that again really just slow down your overall progression. So the way this works in Dawn of the Hunt is you need to complete corrupted Nexus areas of a certain tier, meaning of a certain waystone tier, in order to actually gain Atlas points for your Atlas skills passive tree. Now there's a couple things I want to show you because it can make this actually a lot easier. Once you initially start off running maps, you'll start in an area and probably have a corrupted Nexus very, very close to you. They're going to be pretty obvious. They're going to look red and have red corruption around them, but also have one that's essentially light red with kind of a glowing black tower that you can slightly see. Now, ideally, when you first start mapping, you want to go straight to this, because the faster you finish these, the faster you level up your Atlas tree and the more rewarding loot and experience and everything else you essentially get. So one important thing is to look around all of the gray area. If you notice, you can actually see the towers in the gray area. A lot of times you can't actually see the Nexus areas inside the gray zone, but I've actually had 3 or 4 of mine where you could actually slightly see them. That way you would know which way to kind of map and which way directly to go. Ideally, if you don't see any of the Nexus areas, you're kind of just blind guessing, but the best thing to do would be aim in a direction where there are towers. So essentially you can see these towers over here. We have a decent amount of them right here, so we could aim to go straight towards these towers, clearing a big circle area off of the map. If you do this with this tower and this tower, more than likely you'll find at least 1 or 2 corrupted Nexus to be able to then see and path towards. Now, one of the things with this, no sir, get down. One of the big things to mention with this is once you find a corrupted Nexus, you have the choice of actually clearing out the nodes around it, which means you get a little bit better loot, you get some extra bonuses, and then clearing out the corrupted Nexus, which then gives you your Atlas points. Then once you do that, it actually clears out an area around where the corrupted Nexus was, leaving these sort of cleansed markers. Now, the way this works is it can actually add an additional modifier to this map once it's cleansed, but you can also get fracturing orb drops from these as well. And fracturing orbs are an insane crafting material that allows you to take an item with, say, 4 affixes and lock one of those affixes on that gear permanently, meaning you can re-roll it. And if you get the right one locked, it means you can just re-roll your gear forever and you'll never lose your primary affix that makes that base piece of gear extremely powerful. But when you go to clear this corrupted Nexus, it works based off the same new set of available portals that you get depending on the amount of upgrades that you have. For instance, when we go to clear a corrupted Nexus, your Waystone actually needs to have 4 individual modifiers on it, meaning it needs to be hit with a transmutation orb, augmentation orb, a regal orb, and then an exalted orb. Ideally, what I wish I was doing earlier, especially since early on in wipes, exalted orbs are very, very valuable for getting great gear, is making sure you're using your orb of alchemy. So make sure you save some plain waystones at that level so you can just apply an orb of alchemy to it, get the 4 affixes you need, and that will let you run the corrupted Nexus without having to waste regal and exalted orbs. Another thing to keep in mind is how many portals you have as well. If you're running a corrupted Nexus, in my opinion, you can run it at whatever level you want, but I'm almost always going to run it at the minimum level required in some cases. For instance, if I have to complete a tier 7 plus corrupted Nexus, I'm going to run it at tier 7. The reason for that, just as an example, if I run it with this tier 14 Waystone, that means I only get 2 available revives. They work on attempting the map, meaning if you don't complete it within those 2 revives available and you die twice, you lose that corrupted Nexus and have to go find a brand new one. It works the same as essentially these Citadels do. So you want to run these on the least possible tier that you need to. That way you can make sure you complete them and get your Atlas points, because what's worse than losing a little bit of experience because you're playing on a lower level Waystone is having to find an entire one of these other Nexuses that could take you like an hour just to find one when you could have just ran it at a lower level. Now that will take care of 30 of your Atlas skill points. They recently did add another 10, and at first I was really confused on how to get these, but if you look in the map legend up here, you can see this unique map icon. These are unique maps across your overall map that as you're mapping over time, you'll actually find. So for instance, you can see we found one over here, and they're all in the actual biomes that obviously they correctly belong in, the Viridian Wildwood. Each map has kind of their own mechanics built in, but the big thing here is you need to complete all 5 of these unique maps. Each one you complete for the first time, for instance, finishing the Viridian Wildwood for the first time would actually grant us 2 Atlas points, of a total of which you can get 10 of. So you can get 10 Atlas points just from completing and hunting down these unique maps. Keep in mind, if you haven't completed one, if you hover over it, it'll actually say at the bottom that you will get Atlas points essentially, or an Atlas book specialization from this map. So if you see that, you need to head straight towards it, get your free Atlas points. Again, different unique maps do different things, but for instance, one like Castaway actually gives you a lot of bonus gold. For instance, I ran one Castaway map and ended up getting like 300,000 to 400,000 gold from it. Really quick, I want to talk about your Waystone sustain. 4 maps in particular, especially with the new changes, because they changed it. So essentially your Waystone drop chance and things like that are a lot lower, but you're not dropping Waystones below what tier you're running. And there's a cool way to actually really plan on sustaining these early on before you start speccing into a ton of in-game mapping things. So example, for our original Atlas passive tree, the first thing in my opinion that you really want to spec into, just so you can make sure you build up enough maps and get to tier 15 as quickly as possible, is specking over here first, directly to the right, so you can get this 10% increased quantity of Waystones found in your maps. Now again, with the map changes, some of you might not find sustaining Waystones an issue, but once you get up into tier 12, 13, 14, 15, you want to build up a decent amount of tier 15 maps as you go to give you a cushion. And again, down here at the bottom, you can also go down to 100% increased rarity of Waystones, meaning you'll find more rare Waystones, meaning you can save those for the things like the Corrupted Nexus that you need. Instead of using, again, some of your Exalted Orbs, your Regal Orbs, your Orbs of Alchemy, you'll see there's increased rarity of items found in your map that we'll be taking, and also quantity of items found in your map, which again is going to help your early on with currency and other good drops. And then finally, the high road where your waystones found have 20% chance to actually be a tier higher, meaning we can find those higher tier waystones much quicker and advance through the map tiers without having to go to trade for them and things like that easier. Now for your starting atlas, especially for map sustain, great XP gain, the best starting straight up atlas in my opinion is this one right here. Now once you've taken these nodes, you want to take these nodes over here. Some of you might be tempted to take these quantity of waystones found, the precursor thing at the top, local knowledge, or even the quantity down here, and you can perfectly do that if you want. But in my opinion, you should take these nodes over here so that way you get increased pack size in all your maps, increased magic monsters and magic pack size, and increased rare monsters in your maps, meaning you're spawning a lot more enemies. I think this overall, in terms of getting waystones, getting everything in the game, is way better than this quantity of waystones. Not only that, but you get a ton, and I mean a lot of extra XP from all these additional monsters that are now packed on your maps. Now for map sustain, in my opinion, the single biggest thing is revolving around bosses, and for instance, these overseer precursor tablets. These only give you a certain amount of maps in an entire range that contain bosses, but bosses are specifically amazing, especially with our Atlas setup, for actually upgrading our tier of waystones to find them much easier. For instance, if you're stuck on tier 13 and you're only finding tier 13s, an almost guaranteed way to go to a tier 14 and then to a tier 15 is by fighting a boss on one of your map nodes. By fighting the map boss, you can almost guarantee an upgrade in tier for your waystones with our Atlas tree set up that way. Meaning when you fight the boss, if you're on tier 13, most of the time they'll always drop a tier 14. And then you can jump right over here and fight this boss and immediately jump to a tier 15 until you get to the map tier you want to be at. Again, leveling quickly in maps works the exact same way. You want to stay at the highest level enemy possible, so that way you're not 10 levels below the current waystone that you're running, because ideally there's only so high of waystones. But if you're running, let's say this tier 14 and you're level 96, that's almost 20 levels above this. That's going to take a lot longer to level. So you want to try and level around, if not under if you can, the waystone tier that you're currently on. It'll cut your time from like level 65 to level 80 almost in half if you're able to super speed the quick waystone drops, the higher tier drops, and be able to take on the higher tier waystones fast, which can save you like 10 or 20 hours of just grinding maps up until like level 85. Now, a cool thing with towers, there's less towers in Dawn of the Hunt because they're more powerful. Essentially, the way towers now work, there are essentially 3 individual slots that you're going to be able to put precursor tablets into. However, the requirement for completing the tower and unlocking all of those precursor tablets, for the first one, the waystone needs to have 2 modifiers. For the second precursor tablet to be available for you to put in there, you need to have 4 modifiers on the waystone. And then to unlock the third precursor tablet slot, you need to have a total of 6 or max modifiers on a waystone, and then go and complete the tower, and it will unlock all 3 of those spots for you to put in 3 precursor tablets to essentially super buff every single map in this area. Now, if you notice this bonus on this bottom one, increased number of maps is influenced by 17%. If we put in one of these precursor tablets, depending on what that percentage is, means if there's 15 maps within this zone, for instance, it would have added breach zones to or delirium zones to, it will then go up by the percentage increase that is on the tower. Now, the tower percentage increase can max you out at a total of guaranteeing you 20 maps in this zone, essentially get that extra content that you're putting in the precursor tablet. Now, the percentage for the maps affected by tablets on Lost Towers goes higher as you're using a higher level waystone. Meaning if I used a tier 2 waystone, it might only go up by 2% of the maps that get affected by my precursor tablets. If we put in a tier 14 or 15 map, it might go to 50 or 60% additional influence. So if we do a map, get all 3 spots open, and do a tier 14 or 15 waystone with a high enough percentage buff, and we use this tablet for Mirrors of Delirium, this one for Expedition Encounters, and this one for Ritual Altars, we can basically max these out to 20 maps apiece, meaning we can have this whole zone full of every single in-game mechanic known to man, and we can run them all and have a blast. Again, this works the same way if you're trying to stack for great currency drops. So if we were trying to stack for increased quantity of items found in your maps, like this, and increased rarity in maps like this, or even increased quantity of waystones. If we wanted to super buff increased quantity of items found in your maps with increased rarity of maps, we could find those 2 modifiers on a waystone, get 3 of those waystones, stack them in the tower, affect all the maps, and get massive extra drops from them. So stacking towers and doing it the right way not only keep you from running boring maps, but actually get you pretty insane drops, especially while you're leveling. Now, another tip is using your currency and using things like runes extremely early, even if you feel like you want to save them for better gear, because anything that helps you level or go through the game quicker means you get to in-game quicker, can earn way more currency faster, So saving this stuff and saving some of your currency, in my opinion, actually kind of hurts you in some regards, as long as you aren't obviously like wasting it. For instance, early on, you'll pick up a bunch of runes, you'll pick up a bunch of lesser runes. One of the cool thing here is now that we have 3 different rune types, it actually makes runes way more valuable, because when you go to the reforging bench, you can actually drop all 4 of these in here at once, reforge this, and you'll get an entire iron rune from it. Again, you can combine 3 of these iron runes to make a greater iron rune, which again, early on as you're going through gear may seem like you're really wasting it. These don't really matter, and the 3 exalts you get from it aren't that big of a difference. So either sell that for instance, a regular unique piece of gear that's going to help you level much quicker, or just slot it in your gear, and if you have to get rid of the gear, you have to get rid of it, because it's going to help you level and progress much quicker. Also, what I would do early is doing things like instilling your amulet. When POE 2 first came out, I waited a long time. I didn't really know what I wanted to put on my amulet. I went ahead and found something and put it on there, and overall the extra boost I get from having my amulet instilled, even if I might not keep it over the long term, actually has decently helped my character. Again, once you get distilled emotions, you can just right click and you can look up individual recipes, but again, you can throw this in here and throw in different recipes. Keep in mind, with an amulet like this one that I've already anointed or allocated blurred motion to, if I decide I want to change this later, you can see it will actually let me re-anoint this to a different thing. So by anointing it, I get the big bonus from it initially, making the item way better. And again, grabbing a super good notable passive right off my passive tree by doing that, which can help the build off rip without having to path all the way to it. Again, things for currency like lesser jeweler's orbs, you can buy these on the market very cheap, meaning if you only get 1 exalted orb, you can go buy 15 lesser jeweler's orbs and upgrade all of your skills to have 3 slots open pretty much immediately. Meaning once you unlock the support gems, you can just max these things out and make them way more powerful right up front. Again, other things like these gem cutters, prisms and stuff, you need to make sure you're also using as quickly and as early as possible on your main skills. Again, don't save these. Some of these give you insane buffs. Perfect Strike gives us a 20% more chance to ignite just from having max quality. Again, things like Bone Shatter gives us 20% more attack speed on that skill, which is literally nuts. And early on, I would make sure you should always test items using your Orbs of Transmutation and Augmentation to see if these are actually going to be good usable items that you have. For instance, now I have a hammer that has a bunch of extra fire damage and 19% increased attack speed. That's actually a really good roll. Once I find that these 2 stats are really good, I see that there's actually potential for this item, so then I could come in here to my stash and use a Regal Orb on it, and then if that's good, then use an Exalted Orb. You want to make sure these 2 first affixes are actually pretty decent. If not, recycle the piece and move on, because early on when you don't have a lot of Exalted Orbs, wasting them on upgrading items that really aren't going to have the potential to be any good could actually really hurt you, and you should only focus on upgrading and spending currency on items that actually really matter. So for instance, if we use this Regal Orb, you can see we get cold damage here. Again, it might be okay to roll that cold damage off. To keep in mind, this is our second prefix modifier. Our main weapon has increased physical damage, which we have to make this a good hammer, increased elemental damage with attacks, which we also need to have to make this a great hammer, and increased fire damage. We're missing the physical damage percent and the increased elemental damage with attacks that are both prefixes. Again, we already have 2 prefixes on this, which means now we're going to have to figure out a way to roll that prefix off. Meaning it's going to be a lot harder to make this a perfect item, but in this case, we'll try it. We get stun duration here. This still has potential, but essentially we'll put this aside to potentially re-roll it once we get more currency. But again, that just shows you if you were to roll all of your exalteds on it, you can easily waste 20 exalteds in an hour, but just try to find one that hits that's going to make you a lot of money. And instead, you could have just saved those 20 exalts, went and bought a really amazing hammer right up front, made you immediately more powerful, called it a day, and now you're not stuck with no currency. Also, if you do happen to have some exalted orbs, keep in mind getting some unique items, like for instance this Thrill Steel helmet with Onslaught, it actually gives us 20% increased skill speed, meaning we can attack and use our skills much faster, and also gives us 10% increased movement speed for the campaign and just leveling in general, even in mapping. This is an insane buff. So investing 10 exalts in an item like this could pay off tons for how quick you can actually progress.